The first thing the Mafia boss did when I walked into his office was put a loaded gun on the desk. The second thing he did was tell me my mother had less than 48 hours to live. And the third thing he said made me realize I had never actually been invited there for a job interview. You are going to become my secretary, Elena. I stared at him. What if I say no? Dante Moretti leaned back in his chair. His expression didn't change. Then your mother dies. My heart stopped. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Then I laughed nervously. It was the kind of laugh people make when they don't know what else to do. That's not funny. I wasn't joking. He pushed a photograph across the desk. My mother's face stared back at me. She was standing outside the hospital. Someone had photographed her without her knowledge. I picked it up with trembling fingers. When was this taken? This morning. I looked at him. Why do you have this? Because someone has been watching her. Who? That's what I'm trying to find out. You expect me to believe that? No. He opened a second folder. Inside were copies of my mother's medical records, my bank statements, my apartment lease, my previous employment records, and photographs of my younger brother. I felt sick. You investigated me. I investigated everyone who comes near me. I haven't even met you before today. Exactly. He closed the folder. And yet someone has already used your family to send me a message. I stared at him. What message? His eyes hardened. They know you are important to me. I shook my head. I've known you for less than 10 minutes. You don't understand. No, I don't. Not yet. He stood. He was taller than I expected. Much taller. He walked around the desk and stopped in front of me. I need a secretary who can manage my schedule, handle sensitive documents, accompany me to meetings, and remain close enough that my security team can protect her. Why me? He looked directly into my eyes. Because your mother saved my life. I froze. What? He reached into the folder. He pulled out an old photograph. A teenage boy stood beside a young woman. My mother. I recognized her immediately. The boy was Dante, but he looked completely different. He was thinner. His face was bruised. His eyes were frightened. I stared at the photograph. Where did you get this? My father kept it. My mother never told me about you. She wasn't supposed to. Why? Because I was supposed to be dead. A cold shiver ran down my back. Dante returned to his desk. I was 14 when my father was murdered. He paused. The men who killed him were ordered to kill me too. I listened silently. I escaped through the back of our estate. I was shot. I hid in an abandoned warehouse. He looked at the photograph. Your mother found me. She was a nurse. Yes. She treated you? She saved my life. He looked at me. She hid me for 3 days while armed men searched the neighborhood. I swallowed. Why didn't she tell me? Because I made her promise. What promise? That she'd never tell anyone I survived. I stared at him. And now those men know. They know your mother saved me. And that's why she's in danger? That's part of it. What is the other part? Dante was silent. Then he said, Your mother knows who ordered my father's murder. The room suddenly seemed smaller. What? She witnessed something that night. What did she see? Someone leaving my father's study. Who? My uncle. I frowned. Marco Moretti? Dante nodded. Everyone believes he died 18 years ago. He didn't. No. Where is he? Dante's expression became cold. He's been hiding in plain sight. I felt my hands go numb. And you think he'll come after my mother? I know he will. Then why are you telling me? Because you're next. I stared at him. Why? Because if Marco can't reach your mother, he'll come after you. I wanted to leave. Every instinct told me to run. But then I remembered the hospital bill sitting on my kitchen table. I remembered my mother's tired smile. I remembered the doctor saying they needed the money immediately. Dante seemed to know exactly what I was thinking. He pushed a contract toward me. The salary is enough to pay your mother's medical expenses. I looked at the number. It was more money than I'd seen in years. You planned this? Yes. You knew I'd need the money? Yes. You knew I'd accept. I hoped you would. I stared at him. You're manipulating me. Yes. At least he was honest. I picked up the pen. If I sign this, you pay for my mother's surgery? Immediately. And she get protection? 24 hours a day. And I can leave whenever I want? No. I looked at him. There it is. The contract lasts 1 year. What if I quit? You won't. And if I try? He looked at me. I'll stop you. I should have walked away. Instead, I signed. The moment my signature appeared on the final page, Dante took the contract and locked it inside his desk. Then he said something I didn't understand. I've been waiting 18 years for you to walk into this office. I looked up. What does that mean? What does that mean? He didn't answer. My first day as Dante Moretti's secretary was unlike anything I had ever experienced. There were armed guards everywhere. 2 men stood outside his office. Another followed me whenever I moved through the building. My desk was directly outside his office. My computer had 3 separate security systems. My phone had been replaced with a secure one. Even my apartment was suddenly surrounded by security. I hated it. I hated feeling watched. I hated being controlled. Most of all, I hated the fact that I felt safer. Dante was difficult. He rarely explained anything. He expected perfection. He could remember every appointment without checking his calendar. He could walk into a room full of angry businessmen and silence everyone with one look. But he also noticed everything. If I skipped breakfast, food appeared on my desk. If I worked late, he ordered me home. If I looked exhausted, he canceled my afternoon meetings. One night, I was typing at nearly midnight when he walked out his office. You're still here. I'm working. It's midnight. I have 3 reports left. Leave them. I can't. He took the papers from my hands. Dante, go home. I can't go home because you have security following me everywhere. Exactly. So where am I supposed to go? My house. I stared at him. Absolutely not. It's safer. I'd rather take my chances. He raised an eyebrow. With the people who are trying to kill you? I sighed. Fine. He smiled. Good. You enjoy this. Enjoy what? Being right. Occasionally. That was the first time I saw him smile properly, and it surprised me because it made him look younger, almost normal, almost human. I hated that I noticed. A week later, I received my first threat. It was a white envelope. No name. No address. It was sitting on my desk when I arrived. Inside was a photograph. My father, standing beside Dante's father. I stared at it. My father had died when I was 10. My mother had always told me it was an accident. The back of the photograph contained one sentence. Your mother lied to you. My hand started shaking. I took the photograph straight to Dante. He looked at it. His face changed. What is this? Someone left it on my desk. Who had access to your office? I don't know. He picked up his phone, locked down the building. Why? He ignored me. Dante. He looked at me. Go home. No. Elena. I want answers. You don't know what you're asking for. I know my father died. You know what your mother told you. She said it was an accident. It wasn't. The words hit me harder than I expected. What? Dante looked away. Your father was murdered. My knees felt weak. How do you know? Because I was there. I stared at him. You were there? Not when he died. Then how? My father told me. Before he died? Dante nodded. He told me your father had discovered something. What? That someone inside our organization was selling information to our enemies. Who? We never found out. You know who it was? He remained silent. Dante. He finally looked at me. Marco. I whispered the name. Your uncle. Yes. But he's dead. No. The room went silent. Then the lights went out. A gunshot echoed through the building. Dante immediately moved. He grabbed my arm and pulled me behind his desk. Stay down. What is happening? Someone breached the building. More gunshots. Shouting. Running footsteps. Dante pulled a gun from beneath his jacket. I stared at him. Stay here. No. Elena, I'm not staying alone. He looked at me for a moment. Then he grabbed my hand. Fine. He pulled me toward a hidden door behind the bookshelf. I had never noticed it. We entered a narrow corridor. Where does this go? Safe room. You have a secret hallway? I have several. Of course you do. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Then an explosion shook the building. I grabbed his arm. Dante, I'm here. The words came instantly. I'm right here. We reached the safe room. The steel door closed behind us. For nearly 20 minutes, we heard nothing. Then Dante's phone rang. He answered. Speak. A voice came through the speaker. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard one sentence. She looks exactly like her mother. Dante's eyes turned cold. Marco. The voice laughed. You finally understand. Dante tightened his grip on the phone. Where is she? Where she always belonged. Tell me. You spent 18 years searching for me. Yes. And now I'm standing closer than you think. The call ended. Dante immediately turned toward me. You're not leaving my side. I wasn't planning to. He stared at me. Good. Something about the way he said it made my heart race. The next morning, my mother disappeared. Her hospital room was empty. The cameras had been disabled. The nurses had been threatened. And on the pillow was a single black rose. Dante picked it up. His expression was terrifying. What's that? Marco's signature. Where is my mother? We'll find her. You said that yesterday. I know. Then find her. He looked at me. I will. Hours passed. No news. I sat in Dante's office, staring at the city. He stood by the window. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I whispered, Are you afraid? He looked at me. Of what? That we'll never find her. He was silent. Then he said, Yes. I had never expected him to admit it. You don't seem afraid of anything. I'm afraid of many things. Like what? Losing people. I looked at him. That's why you don't let anyone get close. He smiled sadly. That's why I don't let anyone get close. Except me? His eyes met mine. Except you. My heart skipped. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He answered. His expression changed. We found her. I stood. Where? Old Moretti warehouse. Let's go. No. You're not leaving me here. Elena. My mother is there. He stared at me, then nodded. Stay beside me. We drove through the city in silence. The warehouse was abandoned, dark, silent. Dante's guard surrounded it. He entered first. I followed. My mother was sitting in a chair, alive, but Marco stood behind her. He looked older than Dante. His hair was gray. His smile was calm. And the first thing he said when he saw me was, You have your father's eyes. I froze. Dante stepped in front of me. Let her go. Marco laughed, still protecting everyone. You have nothing to do with her. Everything I do has something to do with her. He looked at me. Your father stole something from me. What? The ledger. Dante's face hardened. Marco continued. Your father discovered the truth about me. My mother began crying. Marco looked at her, and she helped him hide it. I looked at my mother. Mom. She couldn't look at me. Is it true? I'm sorry. What did you hide? The ledger. Where is it? She looked at Dante. He understood. Your childhood home. I remembered the loose floorboard, the old house, the place where my father had kept his belongings. We eventually found the ledger, but it wasn't just a record of criminal activity. It contained the names of everyone involved in conspiracy. Politicians, police officers, businessmen, Mafia leaders. And at the very top was Marco's name. Dante held the ledger. I watched him. You could use this. No. Why? Because I don't want to become the thing my father fought against. He took a lighter from his pocket. I stared at him. You're going to burn it? Yes. After searching for it for 18 years? Yes. He lit the corner. The pages began to burn. The names disappeared. The secrets disappeared. The power disappeared. Dante watched without blinking. When the final page turned to ash, he whispered, "It's over." But it wasn't. A gunshot came from outside. Marco's men had found us. Dante pushed me behind him. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Glass shattered. Bullets struck the walls. Guards returned fire. Dante grabbed my hand. "Run." We moved through the back corridor. We reached the exit. Then Marco appeared. He pointed a gun at Dante. "You should have killed me when you had the chance." Dante raised his weapon. "I don't need to kill you." Marco smiled. "You'll regret that." Police sirens approached. Marco looked around. His escape was gone. He lowered his weapon. "You think this ends with me?" Dante stared at him. "It ends with you." Marco was arrested. The entire organization began collapsing after that. The truth about my father's death was finally revealed. My mother recovered. The hospital bills were paid. And Dante Moretti's empire changed. He closed several businesses connected to the old organization. He fired corrupt employees. He turned away from some of the illegal operations that had made him powerful. For the first time, he was building something different. Months passed. One morning, I walked into his office. He looked up. "You didn't knock." "I work here." "You've been here long enough to know the rules." I thought I was allowed to break them. He smiled. "What do you want?" I placed a letter on his desk. He looked at it, then at me. "What's this?" "My resignation." His smile disappeared. "You've been planning this?" "For a while." "Why?" "I don't know." He picked up the letter. "You can leave." I blinked. "That's it?" "That's it." "No argument?" "No." "No threats?" "No." "No dramatic Mafia boss speech?" He smiled. "I learned my lesson." I stared at him. "What lesson?" "You can't force someone to stay." He walked around the desk. "When you first came here, I thought keeping you close would protect you. It did. But I was wrong about one thing." "What?" "Protection isn't the same as possession." He stopped in front of me. "You don't belong to me. Elena." My eyes filled with tears. "I know." "You never did." "I know. And if you want to leave, I'll let you." I looked at the resignation letter for a long moment. The single sheet of paper rested between us on Dante's desk. It was strangely ordinary. Just a few lines. My name, my resignation, the date, and beneath it, my signature. A piece of paper that should have meant freedom. A piece of paper that should have represented the end of everything. For months, I had dreamed about walking away from Dante Moretti, from the guards, from the secrets, from the threats, from the blood that seemed to follow his name wherever he went, from the memories of the night I had first walked into his office and discovered that the job interview had never been a job interview at all. I had hated him then. I had been terrified of him. And most of all, I had hated the fact that he had taken away my choice. But now he was giving it back. Dante picked up the letter. He read it again. His face remained calm, but I knew him well enough now to notice the smallest changes. The slight tightening of his jaw, the way his thumb pressed against the edge of the paper, the silence that lasted just a little too long. "You've been planning this?" he finally asked. "For a while." He lowered the letter. "Why?" I looked toward the windows. The city stretched beneath us, alive and restless. Cars moved through the streets. People hurried along sidewalks. Buildings reflected the afternoon sunlight. Thousands of lives continued as though nothing had ever happened inside this office, as though no one had been hunted, as though no one had disappeared, as though no one had spent 18 years searching for truth. I don't know. I admitted that was the truth. I had thought about leaving countless times. But every time I imagined the moment, something inside me felt strangely empty. Dante placed the letter on his desk. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "You can leave." I looked at him. "What?" "You heard me. You can leave." I stared at him, waiting for the catch. There had to be one. This was Dante Moretti. The man who had once put a loaded gun on a desk and told me that my mother's life depended on my cooperation. The man who had manipulated my circumstances so carefully that accepting his offer had seemed like my only possible choice. The man who had once told me that if I tried to quit, he would stop me. But that man wasn't standing in front of me anymore. Or maybe he was. Maybe he had simply learned something. You mean it? I asked. Yes. No conditions? No. No security guards following me? No. No threats? No. No contract? He shook his head. None. I almost laughed. No dramatic Mafia boss speech? A faint smile appeared on his lips. I learned my lesson. I crossed my arms. What lesson? He stood. He slowly walked around the desk until he was standing directly in front of me. When you first came here, he said quietly, I thought keeping you close would protect you. It did. His eyes softened, but I was wrong about one thing. What? Protection isn't the same as possession. The word struck me harder than I expected. Dante looked at me with an honesty I had rarely seen from him. You don't belong to me, Elena. My throat tightened. I know. You never did. I know. And if you want to leave? He paused. I'll let you. For the first time since I had met him, there was no command in his voice. No threat. No manipulation. No expectation. Just a choice. Mine. I looked down at the resignation letter. I remembered the first time I had signed a document for Dante. I had been terrified. My hand had trembled. My mother's life had been hanging in the balance. I had signed because I believed I had no other option. That signature had brought me into Dante's world. This signature could take me out of it. And yet, I couldn't move. I slowly picked up the letter. Dante watched me. He didn't stop me. He didn't ask me to stay. He didn't even try to hide the pain in his eyes. That hurt more than any argument could have. Because for the first time, Dante Moretti wasn't fighting to keep me. He was preparing himself to lose me. He had spent his entire life controlling everything. His empire, his enemies, his men, his secrets, his fear. But he couldn't control me. And perhaps that was the first thing he had ever truly understood about love. You couldn't own it. You could only choose it. I looked down at the letter one last time. Then slowly, I tore it in half. Dante's eyes widened. What are you doing? I tore it again. And again, the pieces fell onto his desk. I changed my mind. For several seconds, he didn't say anything. Then he looked at me. Why? I smiled. Because I don't want to leave. He searched my face. Are you sure? Yes. Why? I stepped closer. Because I came here because you forced me. He said nothing. But I'm staying because I choose to. Something changed in his expression. The hardness disappeared. The guarded look he had carried for years seemed to crack. For just a moment, he didn't look like Dante Moretti. He looked like the frightened 14-year-old boy in the old photograph. The boy my mother had found bleeding and terrified. The boy who had spent 18 years believing that survival came with a debt. I don't deserve you, he whispered. I smiled. Probably not. He laughed softly. A genuine laugh. The kind I had rarely heard from him. I smiled too. Then his hand slowly reached for mine. He stopped before touching me, as if he was asking permission, without saying the words. I looked down at his hand, then placed mine inside it. His fingers closed gently around mine. Elena. Yes. I need you to know something. What? The day you walked into my office, I had already decided to protect you. Because of my mother? At first, he looked down at our hands. And later, he raised his eyes to mine. Later, it became because of you. My heart began beating faster. I tried to hide my smile. You know what the terrifying reason was? I asked. He nodded. I didn't choose you because you were the best secretary. Then why? Because 18 years ago, your mother saved my life. His thumb moved gently across the back of my hand. I spent 18 years believing I owed her a debt. He paused. Then you walked into my office. A small smile appeared, and I realized the debt wasn't the reason anymore. What was He looked directly into my eyes. You. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I smiled. The feared Mafia boss finally became sentimental. Don't tell anyone. I'll keep your secret. Good. He leaned slightly closer. Because I have another secret. What? I never wanted you to be my secretary. I laughed. What? I wanted you somewhere I could protect you. Then why call me your secretary? Because I knew you'd never agree to stay otherwise. I stared at him. You manipulated me. Yes. You're unbelievable. I know. I shook my head, laughing softly. And if I had refused? His smile disappeared. His expression became serious. I would have protected you anyway. Even if I hated you, especially then. I looked into his eyes. And suddenly I understood something. Dante's greatest mistake had been believing that protecting someone meant controlling their world. He had thought he needed to build walls around me. He had thought he needed to decide where I went, who I saw, and how close danger could come. But love had forced him to learn something his empire never could. A cage could be made of gold. It could be guarded by 100 men. It could be surrounded by wealth and power. But it was still a cage. And now he had opened the door. I was the one choosing whether to walk through it. I squeezed his hand. I have one condition. He raised an eyebrow. What? If I stay? I paused. You stop treating me like something you have to protect every second. He smiled. That's going to be difficult. I know. I'll try. That's all I'm asking. He nodded. Then I'll try. I looked toward the city outside. The same city that had once terrified me. The same streets where Dante's name had carried fear. The same buildings where people whispered about his empire. People outside didn't know what had happened inside these walls. They didn't know about the boy who survived an assassination attempt. They didn't know about my mother finding him. They didn't know about the promise she had made. They didn't know about my father discovering the truth. They didn't know about the ledger. They didn't know about Marco. They didn't know how close all of us had come to losing everything. And they certainly didn't know that the most feared man in the city had fallen in love with the woman he had once forced to become his secretary. But I knew, and perhaps that was the most dangerous secret of all, because I had entered Dante Moretti's world because I had no choice. I stayed because I was trapped. I uncovered his darkest secrets because I wanted answers. I survived because he protected me. But when everything was finally over, when Marco was gone, when the threats disappeared, when my mother was safe, when my father's name had finally been cleared, when the past stopped chasing us, Dante gave me the one thing he had refused to give me at the beginning, freedom. And now I understood why it mattered, because love meant nothing if it wasn't freely given. Dante could have demanded that I stay. He could have reminded me of the contract. He could have used his power. He could have ordered his guards to stop me. But he didn't. He opened the door, and I chose not to walk through it. I looked at the pieces of my resignation letter scattered across his desk. Once, those pieces would have represented my escape. Now they represented something else. A choice. I turned back toward Dante. You're going to regret letting me stay. He smiled. I probably already do. I laughed. You really are impossible. And you're still here. I stepped closer. Yes. Why? I looked into his eyes. Because this time, I gently squeezed his hand. I'm here because I choose to be. Dante smiled. And for the first time, I realized something. I hadn't simply chosen Dante Moretti. I had chosen the man beneath the empire, the boy beneath the fear, the man who had spent 18 years believing he owed my mother his life, and had finally learned that love wasn't a debt. It was a choice, and I had made mine. I chose him.